Hello, welcome back to another episode of Doug Las Vegas Bets MMA betting show, not UFC, I guess this time, because we're doing MVP 1, the Netflix Ronda Rousey Gina Carano card. Put a thing out on my Instagram asking if anyone was interested, and enough people said that they were that I figured I'd do it. So, if I'm being honest, I'm not overly into this card. I think the quality of fights is pretty low, got some good name value on it, which I get is the idea. They're trying to sell it on Netflix, just get a ton of views, and that's what name value does. We do have some pretty cool prospects on the card. Parnasse, we got Dave Mgoyan, who I'm really excited about. So I am going to go over those fights, going over the whole card. Without further ado, we'll start with this main event. Alright, so I'm going to break this down as much as you can break down a fight between two people who haven't fought in 10 and 17 years. We'll start with Ronda. She was the most dominant female champion for a time, and she had a fantastic armbar. Obviously, a judo Olympian. She brought that into MMA, used those judo throws, hip tosses, the trips to get on top, developed nasty ground and pound, really sharp with the straight punches on top, good pressure. We didn't really see her extended for most of her career. The one time we saw her get into the third round was against Miesha Tate in the rematch. And she showed that she can keep a good pace. She'll relentlessly go for those trips if enough damage isn't put on her. But her poor striking defense was on display even at that point. Miesha Tate, not a striker, doesn't have much power on the feet. You're not going to see her knocking people out. But she was landing clean on Ronda there. So I guess the writing was on the wall for the day that someone defended the takedowns, used the movement like Holly Holm did, landed the head kick heard around the world. Ronda disappeared for a year, came back. Amanda Nunes beat her even worse, and we haven't seen her since. Well, we haven't seen her in the cage since. We've certainly heard a lot from her about how great she is. That being said, it's easy to look at the end of her career and just dismiss everything she did and say, below Holm and Nunes. But I think you have to acknowledge that she did take women's MMA to another level. She was, she forced everyone around her to level up the game, to evolve new tactics because they couldn't just keep getting hit with the arm bar. And eventually the bar was raised. We started seeing women like Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, now Kayla Harrison. All of this, these are steps, step by step, and Ronda was a step arguably after Carano. Carano was one of the pioneers of women's MMA. Always kind of struggled to find the real competition. Even the one girl she fought who had a 17-2 record, which was the most experienced one she fought, came in to that fight having lost her last two before that. And she went out off her first loss to a young Chris Cyborg, which is crazy to say. Cyborg was in her early 20s. It was kind of a crazy fight. Cyborg just went at her with no regard, tried to physically dominate her. Carano ended up on top, landed some ground and pound, backed off, and it just went to more Cyborg dominance. It ended with... it makes me laugh because I see Carano pulling Cyborg down on top of her in half guard before she ground and pounds her out near the end of the first round, and it just reminds me of DDP. That one time, I think was it against Brad Tavares, where he dropped them right on top of himself. One of the funniest things I've ever seen inside the cage, and it's very reminiscent. Well, it's easier to give Gina a pass. She was at a different time. So like I said, she's a pioneer, but you look at Gina and it's very easy to be unimpressed because of the time she fought. But yeah, you have to acknowledge that she laid the foundation for what women's MMA became. So the levels that came after, nothing in its first iteration is great. It's like looking at old NBA games. You can't compare them to the new ones, That being said, my take on this fight, I'm very unexcited for the actual visual of it. I'll put it like this. I love Peyton Manning, but I would not want to watch a NFL game quarterbacked by Peyton Manning and who retired in like 2009? Kurt Warner? He retired a little after that. Anyways, irrelevant kind of comparison there. But I do think Rousey should take this one pretty comfortably. I think there's a chance it's mildly competitive on the feet for however long it stays there. But if Rousey fights like she always fought, where she just gets into the clinch and uses the trips, I don't see Carano keeping it upright. With all the evolutions in the game, I think Ronda was just so far ahead of her, and she's still younger than her, closer to her physical prime, having competed more recently, still been doing physical activity too, even in that time. I do think it's a difference that she was doing WWE, which requires you to be in shape, and Gina Carano admittedly had fallen out of shape and was doing The Mandalorian. So yeah, I think I understand why Ronda's a huge favorite. I would expect her to get on top and find a submission or ground and pound early in the first round. Although I'm not very eager to lay this steep price on her, I honestly wouldn't blame you for using her as a parlay piece. If you're doing some kind of bet on this card, I'd wait. I don't see any props out right now, but I would wait for inside the distance. I think both KO and submission are live. She did have really good ground and pound, but obviously the armbar was her signature move, and she was good at setting up other submissions like triangles and whatnot that I could see her hitting here. So I do think Ronda Rousey inside the distance, likely in round 1. Next, we go to heavyweight as we get to see one of the biggest power punchers of all time back. Francis Ngannou's fighting here, and I would be a lot more excited if he wasn't about minus 1,500 against former UFC light heavyweight Philipe Lins. This matchup is kind of crazy. I can't believe they couldn't find a real heavyweight for Ngannou. Honestly, if you look down the card, I could argue that even Robelis Despaigne is a more interesting fight than this. Yes, his wrestling's terrible. Yes, Ngannou takes him down and ground and pounds him out. What does he do to Philipe Lins? I'd say the one shot chance that Despaigne has is probably just as much, if not more, than Lins has here. I'd say it's a little more intriguing. Nevertheless, let me talk about Ngannou for a sec. Got to give him his credit. He was the UFC heavyweight champion, beat Cyril Gane in a fight that I give him a ton of credit for. I mean, being down 2-0 in a striking match, acknowledging that it's not working, changing to the wrestling, finding a hole in his game, finding a way to come back and win that fight with knee injuries. I was really impressed. The improvements he made over his career from the Stipe fight, taking his humbling there, going, improving, getting better, still destroying a bunch of people, not really showing the improvements in the octagon until he met Stipe again, where he looked fantastic, was able to sprawl the takedown, turned around to the back, landed some good ground and pound of his own. It was really impressive, just the level of technical improvement that he showed over the course of his UFC career. Then obviously the bizarre contract situation, he sits out forever, the title gets vacated, and he goes and fights Tyson Fury and winds up dropping Tyson Fury in one of the most shocking boxing matches in my memory at least. I haven't been watching boxing very long or much, so take that for what you will, but it was crazy seeing the UFC champion go in there against a guy the level of Tyson Fury, one of the best heavyweights on the planet, if not in the last 2 decades, and drop him, arguably take rounds off him with his power shots, give him such a hard time. And people debate still how that fight should have been scored. I had it for Fury at the time, but it was razor close, and obviously Ngannou had the biggest moment of the fight with the knockdown. So I do understand that, and I think the moral victory there is absolutely worth it. Then it was clear in his next boxing match that Anthony Joshua did not take him lightly. He took him as if it was a professional boxing match against another world title level guy, and Anthony Joshua showed him what top level professional boxers should do to MMA fighters. He slept them badly. Still, you got to give Ngannou props. He went out there, he made 2 huge paydays, put on 2 huge events, drew interest, brought MMA and boxing together to watch some fun stuff. I mean, the Fury fight was fun, and the Joshua fight wasn't competitive, but man, I would still say I was entertained watching what unfolded there. Most recently, of course, we saw him in the PFL, had the one MMA fight where he ground and pounded out Renan Ferreira in the first round, showing he did not forget his ground skills despite going over to boxing for a little while. Exploited a hole in Ferreira's game, so he's got some good fight IQ still. So yeah, that's where we are. He's been out since then. This will be his first fight in damn near 2 years. Year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in there. So yeah, it's the great resume, but the layoff does leave a bit of a concern, I guess, especially, you're looking to poke any holes in a minus 1500. Philipe Lins, on the other hand, he has not been much more active. We have not seen him since 2024, even longer a layoff in MMA than Francis Ngannou, since he fought Iwan Cutelaba in a light heavyweight fight. He has won his last 4 fights. It was kind of a weird departure from the UFC. He had popped for performance-enhancing drugs, and now he's back again as a heavyweight here. In the UFC, he showed some decent skills. This isn't a garbage fighter. This was a fine light heavyweight who put together a 4-fight win streak on the way out. That being said, he wasn't a ranked caliber fighter, maybe pushing on the edge of number 15 if you want to be really generous. And he's now almost 41 years old, having not competed in longer than Ngannou. So he's older than Ngannou, was never as good as Ngannou, has more of a layoff than Ngannou, and he typically fought at a weight class below him. With that, I think you can see where my pick is going for this. I think Ngannou takes him out. For a second, I almost tried to talk myself into plus 850 just because it's heavyweight MMA, and Lins, like I said, I do not think he's a garbage fighter. But this is Francis Ngannou. He is a well-rounded power puncher who competed with some of the greatest heavyweights in the sport and showed that he was the best among them at the time. So give me Francis Ngannou by first round knockout here. Next up, we got the most violent and the most competitively lined fight on the card, the only fight within minus 200. So this is a good one. I think this is clearly the fight with the most intrigue on the card as far as the actual result goes, and the odds say that's clear. So let's break this one down as Nate Diaz takes on Mike Perry. We'll start with Nate. Nate Diaz became a fan favorite with a historic UFC career, known for taking tons of damage, going to war, flipping people off in the octagon, and shot to worldwide stardom with his huge upset over Conor McGregor, where he stepped in for Rafael dos Anjos on short notice. They went up to welterweight. He tapped out Conor in round 2 after Conor gassed out, beating him in round 1. And then they did the rematch. Conor beat him, didn't gas out as bad, survived the later rounds, and got the decision win there. Then he took the layoff, came back for a little bit, got the decision over Anthony Pettis, which was honestly a really good showing. Put high-paced boxing on him in there. Then had the doctor stoppage where Jorge Masvidal brutalized him for 3 rounds in the BMF title fight. Proceeds to disappear again, come back to the Leon Edwards fight where he caught him late and had the point moment. But other than that, he was getting dominated. And it ended his MMA career up to this point with the win over Tony Ferguson, where it was kind of a low volume, it was a weird fight between 2 older guys. In the 3rd round, Tony started really chopping the legs, and Nate seemed to be having trouble with that, but he sunk in a guillotine in round 4 that got Tony out of there. Since then, he's had a couple boxing matches too, the Jake Paul one and the Jorge Masvidal one. I'm not going to go too in-depth there. I didn't watch them again, just going off memory. I remember Jake Paul dropped him once landed on the side of the head and kind of sent him through the ropes, but he got up and just defended well for the rest of the time, survived, I guess, put in that guillotine or whatever for a minute. And then he had the majority decision over Jorge Masvidal, which was just a competitive fight that was a matter of volume versus power shots. Masvidal landing the cleaner blows, Diaz landing more often, getting the close decision there. So yeah, he historically a super durable guy who had good high volume boxing, maybe not the most powerful guy, definitely not the best wrestling. We watched Rory McDonald ragdoll him around the octagon a little bit. But he did always have a good submission game from his back, good triangle chokes, good arm bars, things of that nature. And of course, just the cardio durability gave a lot of guys trouble with Nate, especially in the later rounds if you put him in a 5-round fight. Mike Perry on the other side. Mike Perry, he had a half-decent UFC run, but he's one of the rare cases of guys that his career kind of took off after he left the UFC. He always had fun fights in the UFC. He was undefeated for a point going in, and then things kind of fell apart. It seemed like there was a somewhat of a lack of discipline at a point with him missing weight, losing fights. He shouldn't have been losing, being competitive with lower level guys. He went out on decision losses to Daniel Rodriguez and Tim Means, and no disrespect, especially not to Daniel Rodriguez. But I think with the level of skill he was at, he was the younger guy. He's still just 34 years old now. I think if he had taken things more seriously, he had a higher ceiling when it came to how far he could have gone. But like I said, he's one of these cases where his career took off afterwards, especially one of the rare ones that isn't like a case of IMPA or OAM going to the PFL and winning the $1 million. So, of course, they took off. They went and became a champion somewhere else. Won a big fight, headlined another card. Mike Perry almost built BKFC up partially himself. I would watch BKFC cards, and I know a lot of people would watch BKFC cards to see Mike Perry fights, because whoever you put Mike Perry against, it was going to be bloody, it was going to be violent, it was going to be entertaining, and you didn't want to miss it. He knew how to put on a show, he knew how to sell himself just by being authentic, and it's really worked for him. He's had the success in bare knuckle too. He's shown that he's definitely durable. The take damage to give damage is his strength. Looking at fights like the Luke Rockhold fight and stuff, where the guy's so much bigger, so much, you could say technically better, but the game of bare knuckle is, like I said, take damage, give damage, and he is very good at taking to give. Also had the boxing match with Jake Paul where he got beat up pretty badly. I don't know. That was a big size difference. Jake Paul should not be fighting proper welterweights. I mean, Mike Perry's not even the biggest welterweight. So I felt like that was a serious mismatch. Especially because of how Perry takes damage. His game is so predicated on taking shots that when you put him in there with a big puncher, it's not going to go well. So my breakdown on this fight, Mike Perry's a decent sized favorite here, and I kind of agree with that. I think the only way that I see Nate really winning is either putting a lot of volume on him, which I'm not confident he can do at 41 years old. Like you look at the Pettis fight, I don't think he can replicate that. That was 7 years ago now. He was as old then as Mike Perry is now. I just don't think he can replicate that. I think Nate's taken a lot of damage since then in the boxing matches, in the MMA matches, even with the breaks. That damage adds up. You slow down. You just can't do the same output that you can and take that kind of damage, especially not against a guy who hits hard like Mike Perry. We know Nate's going to get hit. It's his game, and Mike Perry hits hard. And again, I'm just going to keep using the word damage. Nate has a ton of scar tissue on his face, and it could just take one elbow from Mike Perry to turn him into a bloody mess. And that makes it so much harder for Nate to hit his other path to victory, where he probably has the advantages in the submission game. Nate already isn't a great wrestler, so I don't know if he can get Perry down there. Mike Perry probably hasn't been working on his ground game a lot recently, so it might not be very hard to get him down. But yeah, if Mike lands at one elbow early and there's a bit of blood in there, that makes it a little harder for Nate to latch onto one of those submissions. So I am going to lean towards Mike Perry to get a decision here. I think he just lands the bigger shots, does the damage on Nate Diaz. Nate doesn't get it to the ground. I do think Nate's live for a submission, but outside of that, I think it's Mike Perry by decision. I even think there's an outside chance he finds the knockout, lands a big shot, and just goes and piles on him. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's 7 years younger here, and if you point to the Jake Paul difference, like, oh, Nate didn't get finished, Mike got beat up, I would argue that's almost it looked better for Mike because he actually went in and tried to keep fighting, putting it on, and just got taken out, whereas Nate seemingly resigned himself to losing a decision and raising his hand at the end like he so often does. And that's another point that you could touch on is in the Tony Ferguson fight, there were points where he just turned and walked away. That'll lose your rounds. If this does go the distance, that's a visual you can't give the judges, and I don't think Nate cares about that. I don't think Nate cares about visuals or winning. He just wants to finish the fight or not. So I am going to go with Mike Perry. I'm going to say he gets a decision win here. Replacement fight here at welterweight. It's Jason Jackson takes on Jeff Creighton. Unfortunately, Lorenz Larkin pulled out. Jackson versus Larkin was a really cool fight. Still excited to see Jason Jackson in general. Everybody loves the ass-kicking machine. Has a couple wins against really high-level guys. He's one of the best, or has been one of the PFL's best fighters over recent years. Had that big win over Yaroslav Amosov, the huge upset back in Bellator. Obviously, we know how well that aged. Look at what Amosov is doing now in the UFC. Just dominated Joel Alvarez last week. Got the win over former PFL champ Ray Cooper. And even in his last fight, taking on a young guy, up-and-coming Thad Jean, had a very close decision fight, showing that at 35, he's not slowing down one bit. He's going to keep that pressure boxing style on. He can mix in those takedowns. Very well-rounded, always in great shape as a fighter. On the other side, Jeff Creighton comes in here. He competed on The Ultimate Fighter in the last season, got one win over Andreas Bender, where he showed his game essentially. Very basic stand-up striking, but when he gets control on the ground, that's where he really excels. From the back, from top position, he's able to control really well, get damage off, and he has some decent submissions as well. So with that, I think I'm going to be pretty quick on this one. I'm picking Jason Jackson. I don't see odds out yet. This was a late replacement. I expect Jackson to be a sizable favorite. He is 5 years older, but that's about the only concern. He's more battle tested. He's got the bigger wins. I think he beats Creighton in every aspect of martial arts. So give me Jason Jackson here. Creighton's a pretty tough guy, but I think Jackson can get him out of there. So give me Jackson by round 3 TKO. Here we go to lightweight as we got Salahdine Parnasse taking on Kenneth Cross. This is pretty sick fight. I mean, the intrigue level as far as who's going to win is pretty low. Parnasse is a minus 1,400 favorite. I think we all know he's going to win, but I think everybody's excited to watch him. If you haven't seen Parnasse fight, then you're in for a treat. The guy is an athlete. You watch him fight and you go, whoa, this guy is fast. He moves really well. Exceptional balance when he gets in the clinch and guys try to take him down. And then obviously mixes the tools together well, does cool stuff. Ended the great fight he had with Robert Ruhala, the Polish featherweight in the UFC right now. Ended that with a soccer kick to the body after going back and forth. Ruhala tried to grapple with him, couldn't get him down. He had one of those, he did that cool lean back kick thing that Rafael Fazil did. It just showed he's really athletic, really fast, really well-rounded. You can see why so many people are excited about this guy as a prospect. And he's not afraid to chase tough fights. We saw him go across 3 divisions at KSW trying to get belts. He wasn't afraid to go up to welterweight where he was outsized. So this guy hunts challenges. I think he's still getting better. He's 28 years old. Exceptionally talented fighter. Kenneth Cross, on the other hand, he's not a bad fighter. He has some Bellator experience. He's had a lot of fun fights in XC. Just not, the athleticism that Parnasse has. I get why he's an underdog here at this level, even though you look at his fights and, he puts on great fights. His fight with Emmanuel Sanchez was fantastic. They both got all bloodied up. He got caught hurt, ended up winning the decision. Got a 14-second knockout with a beautiful straight left hand after that. And he's coming off another decision win where he's gone all 5 rounds. So that this guy's got cardio. He's tough. He's never been knocked out. Does have a bit of a weakness to the submission. Although Parnasse is more of a striker, so I'm not sure if that'll end up coming into play. I'm sure he could end up on a neck or something here. And it's a weakness for Cross that has been exploited. So it wouldn't shock me to see a submission. But overall, my pick for this fight is going to be Parnasse to take a decision here. I think they're going to strike for 3 rounds. I think Parnasse is just going to be the cleaner, faster guy, landing more damage. Cross is going to be tough enough to make it a little fun, maybe have a moment or two and smile off a big shot or something, get covered in blood. But yeah, I think there's a reason Parnasse is this size favorite, and I am going to pick him to get a decision win in this one. Back to the heavyweights here, as we see 2 guys who had insanely different levels of UFC success square off here, as Junior Dos Santos takes on Robelis Despaigne in an interesting one, that's for sure. So we'll start with JDS. He is the former UFC champion way back, but his career it went downhill, to say the least. I don't think it was a case of a career going downhill. I think it was just a case of he aged. Junior Dos Santos' legacy is what it is. He was a champion. He was a great heavyweight. And I think people will remember him as that, or at least I hope, because this last run in MMA has not gone very well. The last 5 times he's competed in MMA, he is 0-5 with 5 finish losses in there. Even though the last one against Yorgan De Castro, he was actually looking fine, and then his shoulder just popped out in round 3. Disappointing ending. And he was given a murderer's row in hindsight on his way out of the UFC. Francis Ngannou went on to become a champion. Curtis Blades, a perennial top contender, fought for a title against Tom Aspinall. Jairzinho Rosenstrike, just a dangerous knockout puncher, respectable veteran. And then going his step down off 3 straight losses, what do you get? Cyril Gane, a guy who's still fighting for championships right now. And then the De Castro fight was his only official MMA fight. After that, he's done some bare knuckle stuff as well. On the other side, Robelis Despaigne, he came into the UFC. There was a lot of hype. There was a lot of talk. What is this guy? He came in with that Olympic Taekwondo background and a bunch of quick first round knockouts, the weird side stance. And he was just blowing through people. Obviously had huge power, just a powerful freak of nature, the way he hit people and they went down. And he gets his UFC debut against Josh Parisian, takes him out in 20 seconds, and everybody's going, all right, we got something here. And his next 2 fights was probably the biggest and most fitting use of the term fraud check I can think of. As soon as someone tried to take him down, Waldo Cortez Acosta was able to completely dominate him, take the decision, and then he got a huge step down in what was supposed to be his easy build back up, and he fought Austin Lane, where he got taken down repeatedly again. Showed that his wrestling was not just bad against a guy like Cortez Acosta, who's a respectable opponent. It was bad that he was going to lose to the lower level guys. So the UFC didn't keep him around. He's bounced around, done some karate combat since then. But overall, just a massive failure of an MMA career. I don't think there's any other way to put it. As far as breaking this fight down, Despaigne a big favorite here, and I think it's clear to see why. If you're putting a gun to my head and saying what happens in this fight, Despaigne knocks him out in the first round way more often than anything else happens. JDS is 42, having taken a ridiculous amount of damage, having been knocked out over and over in MMA, and this guy's a hard hitter. All it could take is one shot. All it will probably take is one shot. But that feels boring. I mean, I'm not putting any money down on JDS personally. The line already moved. Maybe if it had stayed over plus 400, I could be talked into it. But I think a lot of people are thinking like I am, where, you know, Junior Dos Santos is a veteran of the sport of MMA. He's seeing those fights. He's knowing the damage he's taken. He isn't going to stand there and strike with Despaigne. If he shoots within the first 5 seconds, he gets a takedown within the first 5 seconds, more likely than not. That's how bad Despaigne's wrestling is. And he's shown no improvement in it across the 2 fights. And then he didn't fight in MMA again. He went and fought in karate combat against Sam Alvey. I don't know. Even the Sam Alvey fight was tragically unimpressive from Despaigne to me. I think if you're betting this fight, it almost has to be JDS or nothing. I don't know why you would lay the price on Despaigne. I think the only play you could justify on Despaigne is a round 1 KO, which is also probably going to be really close to his money line because that's his obvious path. But screw it. For my pick with odds factored, and I always consider odds at least when I'm making a pick, because I put my picks in on things like Verdict with the XP multiplier. I put JDS in. I think he has such a clear path. He's such a veteran of the sport that if he gets caught, he gets caught. It is what it is. But if he shoots a takedown the first 5 seconds and I have to watch Despaigne lay on his back knowing that this was an obvious possibility, I would feel kind of dumb for having not taken JDS. So I'll say JDS takes a decision here. One for the old guys. Here we'll go to flyweight for one of the most fun fights on the card as Adriano Moraes takes on Phumi Nkuta. Obviously, this was supposed to be Moraes versus Muhammad Mokaev in what would have been the best fight on the card, combined skill-wise. Just that would have been a super high-level matchup. I'm disappointed we didn't get that one. Unfortunately, Mokaev had some visa issues, I believe, so he could not come over and compete, but we will be seeing him soon enough anyways. He just got booked for an event in Spain, I believe. Still, we get Phumi as a replacement here for Moraes. Moraes, obviously the former one champion, very dangerous fighter, fantastic submission skills, had the huge upset knockout over the greatest flyweight of all time in Demetrius Johnson, got knocked out by him. They had their trilogy. He lost the decision. And since then, he has had one submission victory, and he got knocked out in the first round of his last fight. But this guy is still a huge flyweight, very high skill level, one of the best guys in the world outside of the UFC. Solid striking. His size is going to be a problem for anyone, and he uses the length that he has very well for his submission games to hit things like guillotines, triangle chokes. He's very good at that. On the other side, Phumi comes in here 11-0, the short notice replacement. He is a very fast and athletic flyweight coming out of Ray Longo's gym, Longo MMA. He doesn't have the most technical striking, but he swings big. Like I said, he's lightning quick with that right hand. His defense isn't that sharp. He'll get tagged on counters sometimes. Very strong ground game, very good ground and pound when he's on top, does damage. Got a doctor's stoppage in his second last MMA fight, I believe, or one of his more recent MMA performances, and he's had a lot of grappling matches on his resume, so he's clearly worked very hard on that ground game. Overall, I do think Moraes is going to get the win here. I think the size difference is going to be big, and even though Phumi is the short notice guy who probably requested that it's up to the catch weight of 130, I think that might benefit Moraes more. The guy clearly has a tough weight cut to get down to 125. He's got the big length here. It's going to be tough for Phumi to control him on the ground. The submission threat is always there, and then the length on the feet is going to be really difficult to get past. So I'm going to take Adriano Moraes to win a decision in this one. Next up, we got Namo Fazil taking on Jake Babian in a welterweight fight. We'll start with Fazil here. He is a stocky striker for the division. Got good boxing combinations, hard low kicks. keeps the pressure on for all 3 rounds, does good damage. Solid takedown defense that he showed in his last fight against Suleimanov. I was impressed. This guy's solid. He took one big straight, looked like it buzzed him a little, but he survived, recovered, got back in, and kept the pressure on to get that late finish in the 3rd round. He's a guy who's really going to hunt the finish. He's not just going to be satisfied with a decision win. He's not going to sit on a lead. He is going to keep that pressure on, keep throwing those hard combos. Fun fighter. On the other side, Jake Babian. I could not find too much footage of him. I watched the Emmanuel Graham fight when he was 0-1, taking on an 0-1 guy, got the knockout in 1 minute. It was kind of a trip outside of the fight. There was a child ring announcer. The Schmo was commentating. Really just peak regional MMA. Anyways, it looked like, he got on top early and just did good ground and pound. Solid credentials in the wrestling department. Good control ability to stay on top. Outside of that fight, it looks like he's just crushed cans. I mean, the next guy he fought was 2-4. The one guy he fought that was 2-1, he went to a decision. Fought a guy who was 2-9, 2-3, 8-9. You get it. The guy hasn't fought guys with winning records, and he did lose his debut, which was just in 2023. So it's not that long since he was losing to a guy who's 2-2 as a pro. With that, I don't have much confidence because I haven't seen much of Babian late. But I'm going to take Namo Fazil. I think he's just the more proven, battle-tested guy. I expect his takedown defense to hold up against a guy at the level of Babian. And I think he's going to land the harder shots, keep the pressure on for longer with his late fight experience. So give me Namo Fazil to get a 3rd round TKO in this one. Next, we got one that I already said I was a bit excited for. We got David Mgoyan taking on Albert Moraes here. Now, Mgoyan, I'll go over him first. I'm excited about him. He's the prospect. He's just 21 years of age, training out of American Top Team, buddies with Arman Sarukian. You could call it a disappointing performance on Dana White's Contender Series. Fought Tommy McMillan, who, he's in the UFC now. I'm not overly high on him. I think the fact that he was just 20 years old, he just, needed the experience of thinking he had the guy out of there early, like he really did. He almost had a tough guy in Tommy McMillan out of there in the 1st round. And then all of a sudden, after you use that much energy having to survive late against a guy who's going to keep going for those 3 rounds, it was a tough look, but I think it was a good experience for a guy who's so young. You really have to consider that as good as the skills that Mgoyan has shown are, he is about as young as a fighter as you're going to see in mixed martial arts. I mean, there's obviously the outliers, Raul Rosas Jr., Josh Van, these guys. But Mgoyan, the fact that he was so close to competing in the UFC, if he had got that stoppage over Tommy McMillan in round 1, which he was really, you can't emphasize how close he was to getting that, then he's in the UFC already. And he's a guy who I think is going to beat some guys in the UFC. I mean, you can't tell me he wouldn't beat Zucchini, who Tommy McMillan beat in his debut. So I do think Mgoyan's a guy who we're going to see in the UFC eventually. I think it's good for him that he gets a bit more experience on the regional scene, so we don't have to see him go through that on the big stage so many times, because I do think there's always going to be adversity for guys who get pushed to the higher level at this age, and I do think when you're putting him in spots like this, there's going to be eyes on this card, and I think he's going to be a standout on it, so he's going to get more big spots. Hopefully they bring him back on Contender Series or something. Maybe not this season, maybe next season. I don't know. But I would like to see him back. He is coming off a win over Javier Garcia, a tough guy who actually has a win over his opponent, Albert Moraes, in the past. Since going on Contender Series, that one went all 3 rounds. But he's shown his power. He's shown good wrestling skills too on the regionals. Had a good win over John DeJesus too. We'd seen him fight a couple UFC guys now. He had a fight with Luke Riley. Aaron Pico's the only guy to finish him, so going to decision there is definitely not the worst thing in the world, but just showing he's fought some guys with experience. He's fought these guys who have competed with other guys. Albert Moraes on the other side, he comes in. He's an aggressive forward pressure fighter. Not the worst grappling in the world. I mean, we've seen him get submitted pretty much every time he fights a higher level grappling guy, but has basic wrestling. I kind of view him as like a bully fighter. If he can go forward and beat you up, he'll go forward and beat you up. But if you give him enough adversity, you're probably going to beat him. Like I said, he's obviously got the submission flaw. In The ground game, he has 4 submission losses, 2 knockout losses. We saw Victor Henry get him. Patchy Mix got him. Manny Bermudez got him. It was, so the guy has the experience. He was in the UFC. He only had 1 UFC victory over Andre Sukumath by split decision, so obviously didn't last at the higher level. Barely really lasted at the lower level, because even after he left the UFC, lost to Patchy Mix and Victor Henry, who obviously were UFC caliber guys, but he was just used as a stepping stone for them, and they weren't his only losses outside of the UFC. He has a loss within the last year, so it's not like he's been dominating on the regional scene for sure. With some of his knockout wins coming over guys with losing records. That's what I mean by a bully, is you're going out there and you're a guy with UFC experience fighting a guy who's 11 and 13 when you're still in your prime ages, your early 30s. I don't know what you're doing there. Anyways, in case you couldn't figure it out, I'm picking Mgoyan here. I think he's gonna get... I have a tough time seeing how this one ends, because Moraes has proven kind of tough to KO at times. Mgoyan's still so young, so not sure that he's really got that grown man knockout power yet. But I'll take him to get a knockout here, sure. Let's say he gets the breakout performance. I'll say he gets a second round TKO. Forgive me if I skim through these last few fights. They do not really have my interest whatsoever, and neither of them is at an actual weight class for that matter. But we'll go over Aline Perez versus Jade Masson-Wong here. Aline Perez, obviously the sister of Alex Pereira, which is why she's on this card. It is an attempt to connect it to the UFC to build some hype. She's had a couple fights in LFA, fought against Helen Peralta, who competed on Contender Series. She also fought in Karate Combat a few times. Obviously, skilled kickboxer. She's a Pereira. Hits kind of hard. But definitely nothing special. She's 35 without a wealth of MMA experience. Gone to decision in all 4 of her fights. So, yeah, there's not overly much to talk about there. Jade Masson-Wong, she is a bare knuckle fighter. It makes sense that they would find Pereira a pure striker to compete with. She hasn't fought in MMA since 2020, where she was finished by Jamie Lynn Horth. She was also tapped out by Mandy Baum, 2 of the lower level UFC girls, but at least she's fought that level. So overall for my pick for this fight, I'm gonna pick Pereira by decision. I think in a pure strike match, she's got some physical advantages. She's bigger. She's got the much longer reach. She has fought in MMA much more consistently. So yeah, give me Aline Pereira. Although I'm not eager to stick her in any parlays at -400 or anything like that. And lastly, what's a Nate Diaz card, or a card with Nate Diaz on it without his buddy Chris Avila? 8-9 in MMA. He's durable. Hey, everybody in that Diaz crew's durable, and he's got some decent submission skills. Actually had a decent boxing run, won some upsets, if you will. But yeah, Chris Avila's here because he's buddies with Nate Diaz. All you really can say about him is that he is very durable, to his credit. He had that one UFC fight against Artem Lobov, which it's kind of hilarious that they were just like, all right, we got Nate Diaz's boy, Connor's boy, we'll make him fight on the undercard. But that didn't go his way. Losses to lower level guys in Bellator, just not a super high level guy. Brandon Jenkins on the other side, he's not super high level either. Kind of a wild fighter, had some wild fights in the UFC and PFL, kill or be killed guy. More often than not, recently he's been getting killed. His last 2 UFC fights were knockout losses. 4 of his last 5 have not gone the distance. As far as my pick for this one, I'll say Jenkins gets a decision here, but it's kind of a weird pick, because Jenkins, I think he's the more skilled guy in every aspect. He's the more dangerous guy. But I think Avila does have kind of a stupid durability edge, like a huge durability edge here, that makes him actually a sneaky live underdog in this fight. So I'm certainly not eager to parlay Jenkins or do anything with this. Maybe I could even get talked into an Avila dog shot by the end of the week. But I do lean Jenkins by decision just as my pick. I just think he has way more skills, way more high level competition. but that durability is such an important thing in MMA. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, please subscribe, like, comment. Really helps me out, especially if you're one of the people who said you were interested in this on Instagram. Did this for you guys so you could show some support back. It would mean a lot to me. One final time, thank you for watching. I hope you guys are excited for these fights. I hope you're excited to watch guys like Mgoyan, like Parnasse. It's definitely... It's nice to get to watch them compete. Hopefully we'll see them in some more competitive matchups soon. One final time, I hope you enjoyed, and I will not see you next week, but I will be back the week after for UFC Macau.